We are the true heirs of the struggle for economic emancipation in Africa. It took our chance over many years that are protected by the Constitutional Court to summon the captains of the establishment and their puppets who run government today to face the scathing truth of the racial divide they have failed to thin over 3 decades of their leadership. President Ramaphosa has to be validated by Rupert, as the black youth are simply not enough to be listened to. The Ruperts, the Oppenheimers and the like are still the owners of our means of production, who have the audacity to go to America and plead for a Starlink that the youth of this country did not ask for.
So we have a very interesting speech here, which I found particularly interesting, and I wanted to share with you because I like you. But before we start, please click on the button, the like button, so we can push this further. Just this. It's done. Appreciate it. Done. Thank you. Let's go.
People in this house, those who are watching at home on television, on their gadgets, I greet all the members of the NCOP, the leadership of the EFF led by the Commander-in-Chief, Julius Sello Malema, commissars of the EFF and our esteemed ground forces who have kept the candle burning in the wind, not tiring or flinching and calling for economic freedom in our lifetime. It is moments like these and debates like this one that remind us how impactful the EFF has been in South African and global political discourse. It took the EFF coming into parliament in 2014 for the conversation on land and expropriation of land without compensation to be debated and conversations of economic liberation to be driven. It was the EFF that reminded the people of this nation that colonial conquest was never reversed in the supposed new democratic dispensation that was ushered in 1994 and still hasn't been 3 decades later. Never in our history must we allow to be told that the civil rights that came with 1994 equal to economic liberation. It took the June 16 movement and the birth of the EFF Students' Command in the year 2015 at the University of Limpopo to revitalize the call for free, quality, and decolonized education in our lifetime. Furthermore, it took the mighty EFF and its student command to be born for the struggle for insourcing to finally give birth to actual insourcing in institutions of higher learning, municipalities, and most recently in the city of Ekurhuleni, where 700 workers are finally being insourced and their dignity restored. Thank you very much, EFF. Young people in South Africa are correct to place their weight behind the economic freedom fighters in this era of the revolution, as the EFF has been unwavering in amplifying the voices of young people, regardless of where they come from or who their parents may be. We do not once imagine that the validation for the economic emancipation movement will ever come from these chambers, no. But that will never mean that we become silenced to an extent that we are unable to take stock of our own influence and efforts in South Africa and African political discourse as the economic freedom fighters. We are the true heirs of the struggle for economic emancipation in Africa. It took our chance over many years that are protected by the Constitutional Court to summon the captains of the establishment and their puppets who run government today to face the scathing truth of the racial divide they have failed to thin over 3 decades of their leadership. President Ramaphosa has to be validated by Rupert, as the black youth are simply not enough to be listened to. The Ruperts, the Oppenheimers and the like are still the owners of our means of production, who have the audacity to go to America and plead for a Starlink that the youth of this country did not ask for. The cohorts that rose to power in 1994 and remained there to date have not led us anywhere. They have not responded to the premise of our suffering as young people to date. They have not given us land, freed and decolonized education, and they definitely have not given us, the youth of this nation, jobs. Their answer to our suffering, to our qualifications that hang on our walls whilst we are unemployed, is that we deserve 350 rand per month. Money that they themselves do not even notice when it leaves their bank accounts. That is what they think that we deserve as the youth of South Africa. It has become apparent that the comrades of Tambo, whether they wear green, blue, or yellow, will never dignify the cries of the youth with tangible change that will see the wealth of this country being shared amongst us and not limited to one race and a few token blacks like Petrus Motsepe and Cyril Ramaphosa. It is the EFF that got President Mr. Jacob Zuma to pay back the money spent on non-security related upgrades at his homestead in Kandla. It is the EFF that is fighting Phala and the sealed bank statements that have proof of our still captured states. It is the EFF that held a successful national shutdown on the 20th of March in 2023 to demand a stable supply of electricity and the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. It is the EFF that effectively led a political process that stopped the Gupta criminal syndicate.
Sorry, a little bit. Please let us not drown the speaker, who might not agree with what she's saying, but she has got a right to say it in his house. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Chairperson. It is the EFF that effectively led a political process that stops the Gupta criminal syndicate from running the country's government and key state-owned companies. It is the EFF that proposed the National Health Amendment Bill, which was to ensure that all clinics in South Africa open 24 hours and 7 days a week, and all parties in this House rejected that bill. The EFF called for the ban of alcohol advertisement bill, which will end the celebration and promotion of alcohol consumption in South Africa. However, the government of the day pays no business to the scourge of substance abuse in our communities, because you would rather an intoxicated youth than the one that takes you head on your failures and your incompetence. We called for the bank's amendment bill, which will lead to the creation of a state-owned bank. We call for the nationalization of South African Reserve Bank, which will discontinue private ownership of the central bank. We call for student debt relief bill, which will cancel all student debt in institutions of higher learning. We used our parliamentary participation to table motions which will sought to achieve the provision of free education for the poor at higher education level, which was rejected by the ruling party. An increase in minors' salaries, and improvement of their working conditions. The repealing of all apartheid legislations and laws that continue to govern South African society. Nationalization of banks and changing how state-owned companies are managed. And we made a submission on illicit financial flows, tax avoidance and base erosion in Parliament, as well as to SARS and the Davis Tax Committee. The EFF led and supported land occupation programs, which resulted in residential land being given to many landless people in all the provinces. Some miraculously then appeared in this House and cited a misguided sense of ethics and morality to retort our active revolution of land restitution, whilst they themselves put their heads to sleep on stolen land here in the Western Cape. We provide this account of some amongst the many efforts of the EFF to expose the lie that we need 300 years to undo the terror of 300 years of colonization before young people in this country taste economic freedom in our lifetime. This House is filled with solutions that have been provided by the EFF. It is not solutions that we no longer need, but political will to address the multi-layered poverty that young people face in this country. Make it compulsory for all government departments to spend nothing less than 50% of their budget on youth development and upliftment. Amend the PFMA Act to make it compulsory for national and provincial state-owned entities to procure 40% of all goods from firms and producers, of whom 50% are owned and controlled by the youth. Give a monthly seeking job allowance to youth who are actively seeking employment in South Africa. Review the appointment of the NYDA board to make it independent and free from political interference. In that way, when we report that there are people in the NDYA who seek bribes from our brothers and sisters before providing assistance, you will act without reservation. Ensure that a minimum of 50% of our minerals are locally beneficiated. Eradicate dependence on the private sector by taking away the tender system and gradually building state capacity. These are some of the many solutions that we have consistently presented in this House since the year 2014. The ANC and the DA can no longer claim ignorance. The youth of Khayelitsha, of Nyanga, Peleng, Tembisa, Davidson, Mamelodi, Soshanguve, Takile, Tiazenzela, Kwagwa, Tabanju Bushkakong Seshego, Tanini Toyando, Butumelong Borolelo, Akisanang must know that the government of the day refuses to empower them. The only political vehicle that has the capacity to provide solutions and the vigor to implement those solutions is the economic freedom fighters. To address race-based inequality, land dispossession, and a select few our means of production. I thank you.
Is that okay for everybody? And many other things that is mentioned. And I want you to break it down for me. God bless.